talking about this roundtable that we're talking about the conditions. And I wanted to ask you, Alfredo, if you've noticed what seems to be a clear connection between the wild proliferation of wireless technology starting and building around the mid-90s to where we are today, I mean, and growing and growing. I believe the statistics are there are more devices on the planet than people now. Not that everybody has 5, but that there are that many right now. But also with the shocking rise in chronic conditions from anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, suicide, cancer, heart attacks, children being fitted with pacemakers. It's just amazing. So would you agree that there appears to be a clear causal connection between the wireless technology, radiation, and the presence of these conditions?
Absolutely. For me, there is no other reason. In the nearly 15,000 cases that I've had over the nearly 10 years, there was only one reason for people to be sick. And it wasn't so much bad food as it was the levels of toxicity in the field, the electromagnetic field. You know, epigenetics, it studies how a cell responds to its environment. Now imagine losing the entire day and the entire night against this field. It is the reason for me. There is absolutely no doubt. I can demonstrate it to anybody, any way.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in on that. And
one more comment on that, I'm sorry, is that these kids now, they're born into a radioactive environment. You and I didn't have that for 20, 30 years. You know, we were very lucky. I didn't have a cell phone until I was 25 or a computer. So we, as batteries, you and I collected 20, 30 years more of the good stuff. So we have antidote for that, but they don't. These kids that are born after 95, you know, they were they were created in a radioactive environment, so they will lose faster than you and I, right?
Yes.
Because they just don't have enough electrons. Their bodies from inception and conception were fighting a field that was inflammatory, oxidative, and cumulative.
Very good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I know that all of this tends to be connected with a higher agenda that's not accidental, but it's been suggested that the way they can get by with this, they being the ones who are pulling the strings, whatever you want to call it, the elitists, globalists, whatever, how they can get by with this, one theory is that they steal a generation. Roughly children born between the years 2005, 2015, I believe is what was stated. And these children, as you say, they were raised, they don't know a sky without white stripes. They don't know a phone with holes that you dial, or even that you push, or has a cord. And they don't know food, non-organic food, glyphosate without the poisons. And so, yeah, and that it's just, that's what they know, and they don't question because they have no frame of reference. And the younger children don't have a mindset that's developed well enough to express themselves. And we find that older children, when they are aware of what's happening, that they're being irradiated inside their classrooms, for example, that there are more and more students who are speaking out and saying, stop. You know, that's not okay. But
once you get them involved, they're very brave.
Yes.
And I'll mention a couple of examples of how I get them involved. I've got my tricks now because I've talked to thousands of people and thousands of kids, right? That's what I do now because I realize that with kids, my message can get through faster and it could last longer than talking to an adult, right? That decides to ignore me, despite the evidence.
Right, great. And we'll be getting to that, how you get into schools and do the demonstrations. I did want to mention that with this roundtable that we did, it was dedicated, our group, Wired Schools, we're monitoring cancer and suicide clusters in schools, primarily in high schools. And as you may have heard, being from California, at Ripon, California, Weston Elementary, there's a cancer cluster there of a couple of teachers and several students. Well, one of the students who attended there, Mason Ferrulli, about a year and a half ago, he was diagnosed, he's now 13, about a year and a half ago, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, glioblastoma, and he went through traditional surgery and treatment. and it was looking good for him. Looked like they got it, but sadly, recently it has returned, and he's just completed a very tricky cancer surgery. I understand from his mother. We kind of stay in touch. But she's quite the hero. She's pulled together parents. They managed to get Sprint, the carrier, to move their cell tower from the school grounds. But of course, they're still being zapped inside the classroom. But I'm wondering, and his friend Kyle also has been challenged by cancer, and he was going for scans on Monday. And I've shared a little bit about their story with you, Alfredo, and I'm wondering, just for purposes of his mother, Mason's mother might be joining us here today. If not, I'll be sharing this message with her directly. But would you like to speak a little bit directly to Mason's mother?
Yes, well, it is extremely important for the lives of these kids that their field gets corrected to what's natural. It's something they might not even know, and it's so easy. It's so low budget too. All it takes is a couple $100s, right, of equipment, a phone call with me, and in 2 hours they will correct the field to put the body, that little body that has a lot of strength in it, in the proper environment for healing. Jerry Tennant, Dr. Jerry Tennant, an ophthalmologist, believe it or not, talking to the scientists about the effects of voltage, right? How a cell heals and subdivides, and the voltage necessary for that to happen. That cannot happen in any home. We're living off of breadcrumbs. That's exactly what we're letting our body do. We haven't put our bodies in its own natural environment, which is connected to the earth, because it is only then that you don't resist so much radioactive environment, and then you have the energy to heal and subdivide given a proper diet, right? You still have to get low enough in the negative in volts, and any home will have anywhere from 1 to 64,000 millivolts, and our bodies need to go in the other direction for it to heal. You can literally not split a cell without the proper electrical environment. It's just not going to happen. There's not enough electrons there to negotiate with an oxidative cell or an inflamed or a fatty cell. You're going to need a lot of electrons, and that's going to come in from the proper field, number one, which is 0, and then through food that has electrons, that was recently alive, that still has some electricity in it, then you bring it down to the negative. It's very easy. And there's already 2 very famous anti-cancer protocols out there since the 1950s, developed by biochemists that were nominated to the Nobel Prize 7 times, Joanna Budwig. Why we don't know about this, I don't know. But it's very easy. So I've been putting people by the thousands on this, and I want them to know, to get back to your question, is that it is possible, and it doesn't take that much money or that much time. They just need to know this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dubai, how to correct their environment, and I've been doing this, like I said, by the thousands, and it's gratifying to see people heal. I've watched tumors vanish. I couldn't explain it, but then I had read from the scientists that it was possible, and it was, wow, it is possible.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. I'll make sure that she gets that they get that message. So.
And I do this remotely. That was one of your questions. So,
yes.
There are people all over the United States right now that have either flown their relatives or themselves for healing on some of the camps that I run. And I run these camps, by the way, on dielectrical fields. These are the field necessary for your cell to subdivide. It's an area that is so remote, that is so free of radiation, that you can't help but heal and get younger in it. So they come in and get these boosts. But to fly a child like that in that condition would be to kill him.
Again, so important, and we will pass that on.